Minister Zgorski, thank you for this interview. The coalition government took over here in Poland less than a year ago, and you had set a number of priorities in your foreign policy. Of course, after you started dealing with the challenges within the country. Would you say that now you are in a better position to follow on those priorities?
Well, our first priority in foreign policy was to stop unnecessary quarrels with friends, allies, and European institutions, and I think that's been achieved. The funds for the recovery plan after COVID are flowing. We are assuming our presidency of the European Union on the 1st of January, together in a trio with Denmark and Cyprus. And we have an ambitious agenda for that. Of course, there are challenges. Poland is the only EU and NATO country that borders on both Russia and Ukraine. But we keep in touch with allies. I was just in Washington and at the General Assembly of the UN in New York, and of course in Brussels.
Let me start with number one of your priorities, apart from, of course, dealing with those challenges mentioned earlier and getting that positive move forward. Number one, security, the security policy. Would you say that challenges in the areas all around Europe and how they increase help you to the direction of achieving the goals you set on security?
Well, we would prefer not to have those challenges. We would prefer to have democratic Western neighbors on both sides of our border. And that's what we've tried over previous decades. But unfortunately, Russia chose the path of aggression, the path of trying to recover the Russian empire, of invading neighbors on spurious pretexts. And we just can't ignore that. The time of European colonialism is over. We feel that the international community, including Poland, is obliged to take countermeasures against illegal annexations.
Would you say that your counterparts in Europe start understanding what you're talking about, Russia's aggression, and how it could also affect even more negatively Poland, for example, as a start?
Well, yes. I mean, as the European Union, we have taken unprecedented measures. We've given protection to Ukrainian refugees. We've spent 125 billion euros on sustaining the Ukrainian state and on military assistance to Ukraine. And we've also started increasing our defense budgets. Poland is spending 4.3% of GDP on defense this year. We are going on to 4.7% of GDP next year. We have to draw lessons from the way this war is fought and from Russia's aggression against her neighbors.
But what about the stance of other European countries to the dimensions you are most than other countries facing? Do you believe that they consider these worries that Poland is facing with as hard as you do?
It's true that the sense of threat is unevenly spread across the continent of Europe for obvious geographic and historical reasons. But countries are taking action sometimes when they are not directly threatened. Britain is actually very forceful on Ukraine. Portugal has recently delivered some helicopters to Ukraine, which Russia has protested. The Prime Minister of Italy is forthright on Ukraine. And then there are other countries like Hungary, which was invaded by the Soviet Union, which is denying its territory to arms supplies to Ukraine. So actually there have been some surprising attitudes.
And is there a way to deal with those attitudes, to maybe convince other European countries on the
well, we've been trying
for a common?
We've been trying to convince Hungary to approve more sanctions, to approve the refunds from the European Peace Facility for the equipment that we've delivered to Ukraine, but so far unsuccessfully.
Okay. There is also discussion, we've heard you saying in recent interviews, on how this war, colonial as you described it before as well, could go on for years, or until one of the two parties, the invader or Ukraine, is eliminating its forces, is near to that. What is the information you or your understanding on how this war will proceed?
Well, Russia has lost its share of wars, the Crimean War, the Russo-Japanese War. It was knocked out of World War I. It lost the war in Afghanistan, the invasion of Poland. It lost the Cold War. And wars end in all kinds of ways. For example, Imperial Germany lost World War I when they literally ran out of men and material to fight with. And President Putin's resources are not infinite. He's clearly very reluctant to mobilize in Moscow and St. Petersburg. He has had to double the signing up fee for the contract with the Russian army to $20,000. He's running out of tanks to refurbish. He's lost the Battle of the Black Sea. Ukraine is again exporting its grain through the Bosphorus. And he has lost control of some of Russia's territory. And I think the Russian economy will be in serious difficulty in about 18 to 24 months.
Okay, so that would bring to an end this war?
Hopefully. The war will end when Putin or his successor conclude that the invasion was a mistake and that the job of subjugating Ukraine is not doable at an acceptable cost. And they're not at that point yet. So we have to impose more costs.
Okay, I'll stick to security a bit more and ask you about the goal for a common security policy within the European Union that does not seem to go to the direction many countries wanted, including Poland. How do you plan to proceed in that direction? Is there, especially also in view of the presidency?
Well, the goal of having a defense policy and a defense capability worthy of the name is something we've been discussing since the 1990s. You remember there was talk of a European force of 30,000, 40,000 people in response to the tragedy of the war of the Yugoslav succession. If this invasion by Putin doesn't wake us up, nothing else will. We've made some incremental improvements. We now have a European Peace Facility, we have a crisis center, we are supposed to have a rapid reaction capacity, a reinforced brigade in a year or two, but it's not enough. We shouldn't have to rely on the United States in lower order emergencies. Deterring Putin is a job for NATO, but some warlord in the Balkans or some contract killers in North Africa should be doable by Europe on its own.
Talking about the United States, there is discussion on the failure of the country to put an end to what is happening in the Middle East. So to that direction, and this is the dimension of interest to the other part of the European Union in the East. What is your comment and what is your...
Well, I mean, we don't seem to have enough influence to change the course of events there as the European Union. So Poland doesn't imagine that we can influence that. We are concerned primarily with the safety of our own citizens. And of course, we support a two-state solution, but as long as it's even possible.
Security Commissioner, I will ask how that went within the European Union, because the new commission is already on. You did not get that goal, and how will you proceed?
I think it's a good idea to have a commissioner for defense. I hope the commissioner, Prime Minister Kubilius, gets the instruments to act, which is to say funds for supporting the reindustrialization of Europe in the defense field. But also I think he could do more, and I hope he does, in the area of cyber defense and of civil protection. But remember that by treaty, defense operations are actually the responsibility of the High Representative for Foreign and Security Policy. So actually the High Rep is both Foreign and Defense Minister.
One other of your priorities in foreign policy was the migration crisis. Also a problem that other countries in the European Union face as well in all the eastern border of the Union. What's the situation now with in the border with Belarus?
Let me make a more general point first. If the Schengen zone is to be to continue, the people have to feel that the external border of the Schengen zone is protected. Otherwise, countries start protecting their own national borders, as Germany has started doing recently.
There is question on whether this will continue?
Well, Germany is not consistent on this, because 10 years ago they said we can take 1 million refugees, and now they are shutting down their own borders to stop the refugees from coming. The actual treaty-based solution is to protect the external perimeter and to help border countries to exercise control on behalf of everybody else. So Greece needs help, others need help, and we need help, because it's a common interest.
And the biggest problem is in Cyprus.
And the biggest problem is in the Mediterranean, not just Cyprus. It's also Lampedusa. It's also a few other places. And we have to have a mature, non-racist discussion with our citizens about the rate of migration that we can accept, the origin of the migrants, and the way to make migrants into productive citizens. But first, our publics demand that we re-establish control. And we do have a problem on our eastern border. It is a different one from the Mediterranean, because it is not caused by commercial smugglers of people, but by two nation states, Russia and Belarus, recruiting people actively in Africa, in Syria, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, giving them Russian visas. They come to Moscow, they are transported to Minsk, and then they are pushed across our border with...
Is it information that happens also via Turkey? Do you have that information?
Via, possibly, but certainly it is enabled by Moscow and Minsk, and they are then trying to cross our border, and they switch it on and off. So in the summer it was about 400 attempted crossings per day. Then it went down to about 100. Now it's about 200 per day, which is a lot of people. And we've put up one physical barrier. We've made an exclusion zone so that the people smugglers on our side can't get to the barrier. We're thinking of building a second physical barrier, and we're trying to convince Belarus and Russia to desist, because at the same time we have railway crossings there with transit of goods from Europe all the way to China and back. And you know, if that border is insecure, then we can't guarantee that traffic. So everybody, we think, has an interest in that border being secure.
Okay. I would like to go to the presidency of the European Union and ask about other priorities apart from those we already discussed.
Well, as you know, the presidency is not what it used to be before the Lisbon Treaty. So, for example, I don't get to chair a meeting of the Foreign Affairs Council, but the foreign minister during the presidency is a deputy to the High Rep. So I hear I might be asked to deputize for the High Rep in Africa or Latin America, and I'll be glad to do that. But our general priority is security, health security, physical defense kind of security, and in general making our citizens less afraid of the instability at our borders.
And that includes all the European territory.
As presidency, you are responsible for all of the European Union.
I would like also to hear your comment on bilateral relations with the Republic of Cyprus. The President was here.
We were delighted to receive the historic first visit of the President of Cyprus in Poland. We are delighted that our citizens seem to like spending their holidays in Cyprus. And we are glad that Polish archaeologists have made a contribution to the research of the ancient history of Cyprus.